Wayne Madsen is an investigative journalist, nationally distributed columnist, and author who has covered Washington, D.C. politics, national security, and intelligence issues since 1994. He has written for The Village Voice, The Progressive, CAQ, Counterpunch, the intelligence newsletter based in Paris. Madsen is the author of Genocide and Covert Operations in Africa, 93 to 99, and co-author of America's Nightmare, The Presidency of George Bush II, and the forthcoming Jaded Task, Big Oil, Black Ops, and Brass Plates. That's actually out now. Madsen is also the author of the Handbook of Personal Data Protection, Macmillan, an acclaimed reference book on international data protection law. Madsen is a former U.S. naval officer who has assigned to the National Security Agency during the Reagan administration. He also had 20 years experience in computer security and data privacy. He has also worked for the Naval Data Automation Command, Department of State, RCA Corporation, and Computer Science Corporation, which now owns DynCorp, I would add. But going to Wayne Madsen for the 50 minutes we have with you, sir, I want to get into a host of issues because Wayne doesn't make stuff up. There's a lot of reporters and a lot of people that are alternative media that mix in disinfo. I've heard him say a lot of wild things and things that sound wild and always turns out later to be true. And he helped us expose the fact that clearly the D.C. madam was murdered, and he did work with her, interviewing her, and went to dinner with her shortly before she died. He's broken just hundreds of major news stories, so it's always great having him. And I was talking to him. I said, I want to get into Obama's visit to the Middle East. Is that the capitulation? The West admitting their setup of the Muslim world, their takeover hasn't worked. I want to talk about the economy, the banks taking over, admitting they're raising interest rates in reality, using the hoarded money to buy up the system. I wanted to get into Africa. North Con, COM here in the U.S., AfriCon over there, now dominating, trying to take over. He wrote a book about that 8-9 years ago, so I want to discuss that today. A host of issues with him, but the first thing that I want to get into is something he mentioned kind of at the tail end of our little off-air discussion, David Carradine. Now, David Carradine's father was in some weird Hollywood secret societies, and there are quite a bit of those, but Aleister Crowley. Carradine, I know some people that knew him, was into the New World Order, supposedly getting anti-New World Order, was working, and even some of his lawyers and friends said on Larry King, on coming out against secret societies. That was on CNN, not just Infowars.com. And clearly there were different stories out of the police and looked like he might have been murdered. Some family and friends said he was murdered. Then the classic MO of being threatened said, okay, he wasn't murdered. So Wayne Madsen out of the gates has a lot of international connections and always breaks news here. So Wayne Madsen, WayneMadsenReport.com. Tell us about Carradine first.
Well, Alex, I spent 2 years ago, I went over to Bangkok to investigate the use of child prostitutes by U.S. diplomats primarily, but also visiting U.S. VIPs, including members of Congress. I got to know a lot of the people who investigate this type of sordid behavior in Bangkok. And what I'm getting is that there is a burgeoning sadomasochism S&M scene in Bangkok. There's a number of S&M clubs that are attracting a lot of Hollywood types, American, British, and French diplomats, as well as visiting VIPs from other countries, politicians included. And it's a possibility because of people I know who have spoken to the Thai police that what sometimes happens is that one of these VIPs will be visiting one of these S&M clubs, either have a heart attack or OD on drugs or even drink too much booze and die from alcohol poisoning. And what they do is the clubs don't want the publicity. They're quietly removed back to the hotel. So one of the last things we heard from the Thai police was whether anyone else was involved in the Carradine situation, which could have been that he died of a heart attack from engaging in some in what they is known in England, of course, as the rough trade. And so there's a possibility that they're looking to see if his body was removed from one of these S&M clubs. There's three well-known Bar, AZ, and Demonia. And that he was placed back into his hotel room to make it look like he died there alone.
Yeah, amazing. Expanding on that, one of his ex-wives, but people do make things up. Till I got older, I didn't realize the penchant that a lot of women have for just making up wild stories, but it seems like more and more the culture does. But Carradine, it's from multiple sources. But she said in the divorce, she divorced him because he was doing dangerous sex acts.
Right. I'm always dubious about taking ex-wives. they do tend to be somewhat vindictive. But we had two of his ex-wives actually now saying he was into the kind of kinky stuff. Yeah,
and what do they call it where people choke themselves?
Oh, yes. This is one of the theories was autoerotic asphyxiation. That's one of the
things.
Had
a big fancy name. I mean, do you think there's anything to that? Because that's what they're pretty much saying. He was in there choked in the closet.
Well, I have to say one thing. After investigating a couple of strange, quote-unquote, deaths like that in Britain, one of the things that has happened in Britain is people have been found in what appears to be autoerotic asphyxiation, but it's a perfect type of situation if you don't want the family asking a lot of questions. If these people are murdered and it's made to look like this is the situation, the families do not want to go there. They do not want to,
exactly over and over again. It's done to make it look embarrassing.
Very embarrassing, and no questions asked, and the families don't want any further investigation. Case closed, as far as the police are concerned. Then,
Wayne, in my life experience, all of a sudden I was dating this girl, and she suddenly clawed bloody rakes in my back and said, "Don't you like that?" And is blood running down my back? I said, "No, I'm not into pain." And so I guess I'm kind of a weirdo because I'm not into pain. But studying the New World Order and studying it throughout history, what is it about elites and people that get into power that they like inflicting pain and receiving pain? What's going on here? I mean, because I know you've studied the elite psychology. Why do I keep reading, even in mainstream news, that, well, the head of Formula One got in trouble for it, that England is this capital of hardcore S&M? What is this?
Well, I think it's a power trip for some people. It's aberrant, it's deviant, but they know they can get away with it because they travel in the circles that allow them to basically do what they want to do without any sort of pressure coming on them. And I would note that there are members of the British royal family that are well known to be into this type of thing. So I think it's the power trip. Some of it may have to do with these various societies that have these weird initiation rituals. We certainly know there's quite a few of those, and you look at the Skull and Bones, and it's rather a deviant type of initiation ritual that goes on there. But it's not the only.
For those that don't know, tell folks what our Christian conservative leaders predominantly. There's also liberals. Families that they're being urinated on, they're masturbating in coffins. I mean, that's the MO from pretty credible sources. Wayne Madsen, from your journalistic reports, what do you know about Skull and Bones behavior?
Well, basically, it's what you say. The initiation. There's a event called tapping where they'll tap somebody to join. They go through this initiation ritual. Which entails someone being in a coffin and all this sort of weird exchange of bodily fluids goes on. I mean, it's. I think it goes back to even more ancient secret societies going back hundreds and hundreds of years that had.
Well, that's what I was going to say is. You hear about these fraternities where they beat people up or they have sex with animals, and it's like, oh, this isn't a ritual. The head guy just wears a hood and candles and does this because that's what we do. Well, why do they do that? And it's really hidden in plain view that these fraternities, a lot of them, are really the kind of the courtyard entryway into real secret societies that, like you said on record, go back thousands of years, because intelligence agencies of old were just called secret societies.
Right, and I think a lot of people have been through various initiations. I was initiated into the Elks Lodge and the American Legion, and I mean that's a ceremony. But I think what separates them from some of these other groups is some of that stuff is just it's bizarre, and I don't know why anyone would want to be involved in that type of thing. But again, I think it's the fact that they have the goods on one another. They, it's this sort of like wink, wink, nod, nod situation. I recall in the 2004 campaign that Tim Russert, for all of his faults, he had the guts to ask both Kerry and Bush in interviews about the Skull and Bones. Of course, he got nothing from either one of them, and but I have to hand it to him for at least asking. Not many people tread on that ground.